everybody. Welcome back. I took a break from Housing O for about 2 weeks. I did record a video in between. Thank you for joining me today. Today, we're going to talk about contract enforcement. Okay, I need to take this call. Hello. Oh yeah, bro. What's up? Hey, where's my money? No. No, I saw your pictures in Cancun, Mexico. No, the teacher did not pay for your trip. No, she did not. Where's my money, man? Where's my money, bro? You owe me $2,000 and you've not paid it to me for almost a year and a half. Where's my money? Bro, you had the money to go for a holiday and you don't have the money to give me. Bro, I'm gonna sue you, man. Bye. So, this is a situation where a friend has not given me money for a year. Do I have the ability to enforce that? I have no ability to enforce this. This is because in New York State, in order to enforce a loan, someone has to owe at least $3,000. So the concept I'm bringing up is what is known as contract enforcement. Contract enforcement is the ability to collect either funds or to get compensated if a contract is breached. This can only happen if there's a mechanism to force someone who hasn't paid you to pay you back, or someone who hasn't fulfilled the contract to compensate you. So the bro that did not pay me my money back, I have no ability to enforce that. Therefore, it's meaningless. It means next time somebody wants to borrow $2,000 from me, I am going to be reluctant to lend $2,000 because I know I have no ability to enforce it. So how does this apply to Housing O homeless? Well, it applies to all the stakeholders involved. So if you don't have the ability to enforce something, people will either charge a very high price for it, or they just won't get involved in that particular industry. I want you to imagine if, for example, you worked at your company or for the government or for any non-for-profit organization and you did not know when you're going to get a paycheck. By the way, this happens in a number of countries in the developing world and in Africa where people don't get paid for months sometimes. That situation, the society would be negatively affected because the trust will be broken down. Let me give and illustrate an example of what happens when people are not paid. If teachers or nurses are not paid, for example, what happens is then people who rent out houses or property or apartments or flats as they're called in the UK would not rent them out to teachers or nurses because they know that they're not going to get paid. They don't know when they'll get paid their rent. Or in a best case scenario, they will hike up the rent and the deposit significantly. So it is imperative that everybody's paid on time, because these things have a feedback loop. Teachers and nurses are not paid on time in my example. Then the people who rent out, the landlords, are not paid on time. Mortgages are not paid on time because landlords may rely partially on the rents that they're getting to pay the mortgages. Mortgages are not getting paid on time, and therefore everybody becomes risk averse. In other words, people stop trusting each other. In fact, I will say this with confidence. The reason why most of Africa is not developed is the lack of contract enforcement. Same thing applies to developing countries outside Africa, countries like Burma or the Philippines, etc., etc. The reason why they are not developed is the lack of contract enforcement. You do not know whether you will get paid if you do a business, so you choose not to do business with anybody, including the government, because maybe the government will pay you, maybe they won't. So how do you ensure contract enforcement? Contracts can be enforced through a robust judicial system plus law enforcement. This means no matter how important or powerful someone is, if they do not fulfill their part of the contract, there will be mechanisms to enforce a contract. A contract has to be enforced in a reasonable time period. In relation to housing, that means the ability of a landlord to be able to easily evict, which I previously spoke about, and in relation to a tenant, the ability of the landlord being able to fix any problems that happens in a household, which I also previously spoke about. Another idea is to remove to give people incentives, for people to be kind. For example, a very good example I'll give is if you help a friend or a relative live in your household because they don't have a home to live in, or they don't have any household and they are homeless, you should also have an ability to easily evict them. It should not require a court order or some sort of arbitration, as there is no lease or contract. You're only doing it out of your kindness. So a very good example in relation to housing is a friend I know helped out a lady and her daughter who was a friend as well. And that lady and the daughter lived in his house for 2 years and refused to leave the house when he asked them to. And he had to go through an eviction process that was a very long process. And given that she had a daughter, it took another 9 months or so before the eviction could go through. That is not fair. That discourages people from being kind to each other. In addition, another good example is when your lease is over and you have to move out, there should be no need to go through the full eviction process. The contract is over, the person should move out, and that period of time must be short. I would say 2 weeks after the lease is over. That's the time frame that the person has to move out. Why? So there should be no holdover tenant who is forcing you to stay on a lease that you have not signed. In conclusion, I would say that there's a lot more we have to talk about in contract enforcement. Basically, contract enforcement is the idea that your word is your bond. Okay. This is a saying that I got from one of my friends, and it's a very good word. In other words, and I got this from a YouTube channel, your words is equal to your actions. And contract enforcement means that any government that is a good government will try to ensure that they enforce the words and actions of every citizen. Of course, if it's on paper, it will be more solid than if it's not. Of course, if it's not on paper, then there might be implied contract and other things. But the idea behind it is that contracts would be enforced, and bad, or what I call moral hazard situations, bad situations where people are not keeping their word, that would be strongly discouraged. And the only way to do that is to ensure that the enforcement is done in a reasonable time frame. This is also helpful when dealing with the housing crisis as well. We need to encourage acts of kindness in the housing crisis if we are to reduce homelessness. Thank you, everybody, and good day, good night. Thank you.